Get down! Put your hands on your...
What the hell is that?
Hudson Valley, the height of the battle for U.S. independence in 1781. On General George Washington's side, soldier Ichabod Crane is fiercely fighting, defeating opponents in battle. He quickly examines their hands as if trying to find something. Suddenly, a rider with an iron mask on his face appears before him. The fierce warrior charges straight at Ichabod, but without hesitation, he shoots him with a revolver. The shot doesn't stop the enemy, and he continues approaching the hero. During the struggle, Ichabod momentarily gets distracted by a scar on the fighter's hand, and the brute inflicts a serious axe wound on him. Ichabod retaliates by beheading him, after which he falls unconscious to the ground next to the defeated foe. Ichabod awakens in 2013 in a cave, surrounded by jars of ritual artifacts. Confused, he exits the forest onto the road, where passing cars almost hit him. The hero decides to escape from all these things he doesn't understand and finds himself in the town of Sleepy Hollow. Imagine you suddenly found yourself in the future. What would you do? Share your ideas about how events would unfold in the comments. Meanwhile, in Sleepy Hollow, the local sheriff is worried about the rapidly increasing number of unsolved crimes in the town and intends to take on another case. His partner, Lieutenant Abby, doesn't share his enthusiasm, as she plans to leave this small town soon for good. While patrolling, the police receive a call about strange sounds coming from horses in a nearby stable. They head to the scene to investigate what could have frightened the animals so much. On the property, Abby discovers with horror the beheaded stable owner. She immediately informs her partner about the discovery and rushes to him at the stable. Upon arrival, Abby realizes it's already too late. She becomes a witness to a gruesome scene, and the perpetrator jumps onto a horse and disappears into the darkness. In shock, she only manages to spot one piece of evidence, a scar in the shape of a crescent on the unknown assailant's hand. Officer Andy Brooks comes to Abby's aid and nearly runs over Ichabod on the way. He decides to detain him as a suspect in the stable incident. At the police station, they show the man to Abby, but she's sure that a man in a red uniform attacked the sheriff. Upon hearing this, Ichabod realizes with horror that they're talking about the headless rider.
Hey, who is he? When's the last time you saw him?
When I cut off his head.
Who are you?
The cops decide to put the suspect through a lie detector test. Ichabod tells his story, which seems even more surreal. During the War of Independence, he served on the British Army's side, but due to conscience, he switched to the enemy's side and became a spy under the guidance of General Washington. After suffering a serious injury, he ended up in a field hospital where his wife Katrina worked as a nurse. Her anxious face was the last thing he remembered before awakening in the cave. The investigators inform Ichabod that 250 years have passed since those events, and George Washington became the first president of independent America. The authorities decide to send the suspect to a psychiatric clinic. Abby tries to protest this decision, as Ichabod accurately described the man she saw in the stable. It's even stranger that the sheriff's neck wound seems to have been cauterized with a hot blade. Eventually, the persistent girl manages to persuade the chief to personally interrogate Ichabod. Abby releases the suspect from custody and asks him to show the cave where he woke up after a long sleep. Inside, they discover a Bible with a passage about the horsemen of the apocalypse highlighted, describing one of them as a man on a white horse having a bow. Ichabod tells Abby about the secret mission entrusted to him by Washington. He was to find and eliminate a mercenary marked with the bow symbol. This was supposed to help win the revolution and forever change the fate of humanity. Ichabod is convinced that the headless man is one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, and the world is in danger once again.
He is death itself, Lieutenant, and somehow he has returned to Sleepy Hollow to finish what he started.
With the coming of darkness, the headless horseman heads towards his new victim, the local church pastor. Meeting the demon, the man desperately tries to stop him with magical spells, but the horseman is too powerful and easily defeats his opponent. Before his demise, the pastor assures the horseman that he's not afraid and will never reveal the secret he guards. Learning about the incident, Abby immediately rushes to the crime scene. Examining the pastor's body, she discovers a burnt wound on his neck as well. Meanwhile, a crow lands on the hood of a police car, luring Ichabod to follow it. Seeing the suspect freely wandering the street, The police chief gives Abby a scolding. The crow leads Ichabod to a cemetery where he discovers his wife Katrina's grave. An angered Abby follows him, intending to take him to the psychiatric hospital. In her impassioned speech, she mentions that she's encountered the paranormal before, but no one close to her believed it, and she gave up. Upon arriving at the hospital room, Abby still decides to share her story with Ichabod. In her story, Abby recalls her childhood when she and her sister were walking home through the woods. Suddenly, 4 white trees appeared before them, concealing a frightening white figure. Sometime later, the girls were found unconscious on the roadside, but their story wasn't taken seriously. Following this incident, Abby's sister lost her sanity and spent most of her life in psychiatric institutions. Now Ichabod is also deemed crazy, but Abby starts to realize that he might be telling the truth. She decides to trust her instincts once again and goes to the sheriff's office in search of clues. It turns out the man had been investigating Sleepy Hollow's mysteries for a long time and found information about the witch burnings over 3 centuries ago. The surviving witches split into 2 clans and hid among people, concealing their true nature. Since then, many unsolved crimes have occurred in Sleepy Hollow. It's revealed that Abby and her sister weren't the only ones who encountered the demon in the woods. It was believed that this creature would summon the horsemen of the apocalypse into the real world. In a dream, Katrina appears to Ichabod to tell him the truth. It turns out his wife is a witch indeed, and her body isn't in the grave. It's the headless horseman's severed head. For many years, it was guarded by the pastor, who also belongs to the clan. However, the ancient malevolent force has awakened once more.
When you wounded the horseman, your bloodlines merged. You became linked, bound together by blood.
Thus, to stop the horsemen of the apocalypse, Ichabod needed to be enchanted as well. The demon's body was buried in an iron coffin at the river's bottom, while Ichabod was placed in the cave to prevent the dark forces from reaching him. However, someone powerful woke the horseman from his slumber, bringing Ichabod back to life with him. This evil entity controls the horseman and keeps Katrina captive on the dark side of reality. Now the world is in danger again. If the horseman finds his severed head, his master, Moloch, would be released from purgatory and the end of days would arise. Suddenly, the space around them fills with ominous sounds, foretelling the demon's approach. Before disappearing, Katrina manages to convey an important message to her beloved.
You must stop the horseman from retrieving his skull. Remember, light is his weakness. He can't survive the sunrise.
Ichabod regains consciousness surrounded by medical staff trying to forcibly administer a sedative. Suddenly, Abby bursts into the room. Under the pretext of arrest, she takes him away. On the way, she contacts Officer Andy and asks him to send a police team to the church immediately. She tries to convince her colleague that the perpetrator will return there tonight. After the call, Andy hears strange noises from the sheriff's office. Inside, he encounters the headless horseman, but reacts to him completely calmly. Andy informs the ancient evil that he knows the location of the severed head. Abby and Ichabod dig up Katrina's grave and find the headless horseman's severed head. However, the headless demon unexpectedly confronts them and opens fire from a rifle. Abby uses up the entire magazine to shoot the horseman, but the bullets have no effect. A fierce battle erupts between the horseman and Ichabod while Andy arrives at the church. Relying on his support, Abby runs towards him, but Andy's treacherous strike comes swiftly. He tries to lock Abby in the car, but she resists and bites his hand. Despite this, Andy assures her that she won't be able to defeat the horseman and asks her to surrender. Ichabod manages to hide among the graves with the severed head. The horseman heads towards Abby, but patrol police intercept him. Seeing the ancient evil with their own eyes, they open fire in horror. Meanwhile, dawn arrives, and the horseman is forced to return to the depths of the Hudson River to avoid being destroyed by the light. Abby and Ichabod return to the station, where they are met by a concerned police chief. Ichabod's story is confirmed, and now the police building is surrounded by journalists eager to learn the details of the events. Andy is arrested, and he's ready to take responsibility for the recent crimes. Abby, after all the unsettling events, decides to stay in Sleepy Hollow to help her new friend save the world. Studying the ancient Bible, Ichabod tells Abby that their meeting wasn't coincidental. In Katrina's vision, she called Ichabod the first witness, but there were 2 witnesses in the book. Ichabod asserts that Abby is the second witness, as she also encountered the demon in her childhood, and they must stand against the horseman.
Brought together for a 7-year period of tribulation to defend humanity from the forces of hell.
Meanwhile, in a jail cell, the demon appears to Andy to punish him for his failed mission. Abby and Ichabod hurry to the prisoner, but the ancient evil has already taken his life. At that moment, the partners notice the reflection of a departing white demon in the mirror. Suddenly, it shatters into pieces, as if foreshadowing that a new battle will happen very soon. Later at night, Ichabod is tormented by nightmares. In his dream, he is pursued by the horsemen of the apocalypse, but Katrina saves him. She warns him about the emergence of a woman who aids the forces of evil. Meanwhile, the police chief stubbornly refuses to believe in the reality of paranormal forces. There is still no evidence. Police officers who saw the horsemen refused to testify due to fear. The video footage from Andy's cell camera shows that the officer shortened his own lifespan. Ichabod is under police surveillance, still considered insane. Abby visits him and learns about Katrina's warning of new forces of evil residing in Sleepy Hollow. Meanwhile, in the morgue, the demon resurrects Andy and gives him an amulet with which he is to unleash the ancient evil. Abby and Ichabod arrive at the cemetery, where they attend the sheriff's funeral. Remembering fragments of his dream, Ichabod realizes who Katrina was referring to in her message.
She's one of us. Those were her exact words. She was referring to a witch.
At night, Andy comes to the cemetery and places the amulet on one of the gravestones. A woman rises from the grave, covered in dirt. The officer delivers a message from the demon. She must retrieve the ashes of righteous ancestors to resurrect using them. Later, Andy stops a passing traveler's car. After learning his full name, he apologizes for what needs to happen. Unexpectedly, the resurrected witch lunges onto the hood and burns the car from the inside. The next morning, Abby and Ichabod arrive at the crime scene, where they find the victim's body. Claw marks are left on his chest, as if someone collected ashes from there. Ichabod recalls witnessing a similar horrifying sight many years ago. During the war, American soldiers set up camp in the woods. That night, the sky was lit by a massive red moon, yet it didn't trigger fear in anyone. The next morning, Ichabod's squad reached the camp and horrifyingly discovered that all that was left of the soldiers was ashes. The crimes continued, and the number of victims grew. Rumors of a coven of witches emerged, who had formed an alliance with the enemy forces. Abby recalls seeing information about witches in the sheriff's records, so they head to his office. Upon arrival, the partners learn that all of the man's personal belongings were moved to the archives and can't be accessed without the police chief's permission. Suddenly, Ichabod devises a plan and leads Abby to the basement of the police station, where he uses an axe to break through a wall. He explains to Abby that during the war, soldiers constructed an underground tunnel system beneath the town to secretly transport ammunition and supplies. The bodies of defeated witches were also placed here, as they were forbidden to be buried. Following the labyrinthine tunnels, the partners reach the archive, where all information about paranormal events in Sleepy Hollow is stored. In the sheriff's records, Ichabod finds mentions of Sybil, the leader of the malevolent witch coven. Hunters managed to capture her in the woods, but she left a message behind.
By the turn of the blood moon, the ashes of your ancestry will be mine. Your flesh will be my flesh. I will live again.
Abby realizes that the witch is tracking the descendants of hunters, and the man in the car was one of them. Together with Ichabod, they immediately head to the home of the second descendant's family, but the witch has already arrived there first. She attacks a young boy but stops upon noticing something in another room. Abby and Ichabod arrive at the house, where they find a frightened woman and her son. It turns out that the witch took the ashes of the family's deceased father, who was a descendant. She spared the boy, as he is an adopted child, and his father was the last of the line of witch hunters. To stop Sybil's resurrection, the partners venture into the tunnel where her bones are buried. However, she has already completed the ritual with Andy's help. The enraged witch prepares to attack her next victims, but Ichabod knows the tunnels all too well. With Abby by his side, he retreats to a safe distance and tosses a burning torch into a box of ammunition. A detonation occurs, and the witch is once again engulfed in bright flames. One night after all the events, Abby has a strange dream. In the dream, she sees herself as a young girl in an interrogation room being questioned by Ichabod. Suddenly, Ichabod's pupils turn white, and he speaks in a demonic voice, commanding Abby to stop hiding the truth. Abby is awakened by an urgent call on her mobile phone. Psychiatrist Maura Vega is standing on the edge of a rooftop, demanding that Abby come up to her. Perplexed, Abby tries to stop the doctor, but suddenly her conversationalist's pupils turn white. The woman confesses that she didn't believe their story about the demon all those years ago, and then jumps off the roof. It's revealed that Maura was the longtime treating physician of Jenny, Abby's sister. Her notes revealed that the doctor also started believing in the reality of evil forces, but continued to keep Jenny institutionalized due to fear. Ichabod deduces that Abby and her sister pose a threat to the demon, prompting it to direct its forces to eliminate them. Despite Abby's protest, they decide to go to the psychiatric clinic to see Jenny. The sisters hadn't been in touch for a long time, so Jenny only agrees to talk with Ichabod. He explains to Jenny about the recent events involving Dr. Vega and the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, who are approaching Sleepy Hollow. Ichabod passionately asks Jenny for help in fighting the forces of evil, but she refuses. She still resents her sister for not supporting her and for keeping the truth about the demon in the woods hidden from everyone.
My conscience is clear. Ask Abby if she can say the same.
Finally, Abby decides to tell Ichabod the truth she's been hiding for years. On that day in the woods, Abby regained consciousness before Jenny did. By the time the sisters were found, 4 days had already passed, and the whole town was searching for them. A man found the girls in the woods, and he too noticed the giant demon figure among the trees, but kept it a secret out of fear. Later, during the questioning, Abby also lied about not seeing anything. Jenny was the only one who told the investigators the whole truth, which led to her being labeled as crazy and sent to the institution. All this time, Abby has been haunted by guilt for betraying her sister. However, she's not the only one suffering from remorse. The man who found the girls in the woods also carries the burden of guilt. So the demon visits him in his dreams. Gunshots ring out on his ranch, and a police team rushes there. Inside the house, Abby finds an armed man with white pupils. He warns her about the Sandman, who will come for her in her dreams, and then shoots himself. Later in the archive, Abby finds information about a vengeful entity that attacks its victims in their dreams. Ichabod recognizes the description as the faceless demon Rahiriantos. Legends of this creature were told by Native Americans who fought alongside Washington's army. In dreams, the demon torments anyone who has ever committed evil deeds. Ichabod asks Abby to drive him to the only remaining representative of the native population in Sleepy Hollow. Reluctantly, a shaman named Simus agrees to help the guys when he learns about the seriousness of the threat. In his heady out, he prepares a potion that will transport them to the Valley of Death to battle the demon. He warns Abby that she might lose her life in reality if the demon defeats her in her dream. Together with Ichabod, she dives into the dream. First, the demon comes to Abby, meeting her in the woods. He starts tormenting her with memories of the past, where her sister implores her to tell the investigators the truth. Reliving these events, Abby begins to lose control over herself, and the demon gets closer. Ichabod comes to her aid, but Rahiriantos easily overpowers him. He's about to finish off Ichabod, but suddenly Abby joins the fight. She finally starts speaking the truth about what happened in the woods, bravely facing the demon.
It's my fault. You can come at me all you want, but I see you. I'm not afraid anymore.
At her words, the demon turns into ice, and then Abby shatters it into small fragments. Upon returning to the real world, Abby decides to go to the clinic to see her sister, finally talk to her, and apologize for what she's done. However, upon entering her room, she realizes that Jenny escaped through the ventilation shaft. These were the first episodes of the Sleepy Hollow series. In Abby's place, I wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity to confront ancient mythical evil, even despite the danger. However, it seems that the events that follow will bring Abby a lot of sorrow, and she will regret her decision to stay in Sleepy Hollow more than once. Would you risk your life to save humanity from ancient evil? Let's discuss in the comments.